most is no longer just a transport. People don't look at it as a transport. It's more as a place where everybody gather or to do shopping, to see all the tallest building there. So I think, thank you for your taking that example, one of the work that you have undertaken in Hong Kong. Okay, anyone else? Please, go ahead.
Bertanggungjawab pasal post tak dia, so saya kena jawab lagi. So actually I taking care about the city plan for the Kuala Lumpur. So kalau nak menyatakan bahawa kita punya city plan tak favor to the public transport, memang tak betul tu. One of the strategy city plan Kuala Lumpur is to integrate public transport and land use planning. So actually for the information, we postpone our Gazette city plan. We actually plan for 1st July, but actually we try to match public transport master plan. That's why we postpone to Gazette our city plan on 28 February 2013. Sebenarnya kita tak nak ada pencanggahan. That's why kita tunggu juga apa-apa perancangan berkaitan pengangkutan awam untuk integrate dengan future plan. Kita tak nak jadi macam MBTJ. After kita dah Gazette, suddenly ada perubahan. So susah pada semua, bukan pada DBKS saja. At the same time, kita ada juga champion dari segi highway pun ada juga planning dia nak masuk to the city centre. Saya rasa Tan Sri pun aware, our mayor strongly object highway coming to the city centre. So that's why ada juga lah dari segi contohnya dimensi oleh Prasarana tadi, nak integrate stesen Abdullah Hukum dengan Mid Valley. Kita aware, tapi at the same time the development to coming very faster. So we need input from Prasarana. What the future plan to integrate which station. So we cannot wait. So development coming, we must take care. That's why future plan for the LRT, MRT and the highway, we must integrate to the city KL city plan. Okay. So itulah Tuan Musi memang.
Terima kasih.
Okay.
I think our representative from City Hall just spoke in defense of City Hall, that it is not quite true that they are the impediment or the obstacle of any public transport development. They do take into account the views of others, but I think the intent and purport of this forum is actually to open up. There is no necessity for defending. We open up and see what areas, maybe there are certain things that we may have overlooked or we think that it can be improved further. And I think this is what we are trying to see. Thank you for your very positive input. And then now I'm going to get another intervention from the professor that started all this. Professor Farhan. Yeah, I mean, I have to deal with him in the same way in the commission. Anyway. Please, Prof.
Thank you, Dr. I
hope you don't take offense. I am just
No. He's used to the jokes. Dasri, thank you very much, friends, for all your interventions and ideas. I do see we have 3 levels of. I'm a framework person, so I've drawn something here. It's just that what we were talking about are much aspirations which are good. Engagement of public, telling us what should be, sustainability of our urban and so on. These are all aspirations of the people. So this should be the goal. Okay? This goal should be translated in some form of a policy statement, of which we do not have in the country. So the national transport policy should have taken this as part of the vision of the country in terms of transport, mobility, and its associated goals. So we don't have that. But not all is lost, because this can easily be translated into a government vision on transportation, which we do not have. We have at the GTP level, which is transformational in nature and interim in nature. And the country was not sure until recently whether the first phase of GTP would go beyond 2012. Now we know it's going, but it is still interim. But in terms of planning for infrastructure, especially, that takes a long time, we need this encompassing policy, which ideally should be a national transport policy. But if we don't have that, perhaps a government statement saying from now on, sustainable transport will be our policy. Okay, it could be Tansi, an election manifesto, for example. Okay, I was about to say an election manifesto toward one authority, but our British friends says no. So I think I agree that is more difficult to attain. Perhaps a manifesto towards a common transport policy for sustainable transport, which we do not have. Being told openly, it is here and everywhere, but it is not a statement. So that's that part, the aspiration part. Okay. Then we go to the policy. Okay, if the ministries and the agencies remain as it is, I have in a short while put, we have our public transport policy, we have the national automotive policy, we have the road development policy, we have the land use planning policy, we have perhaps the urban planning policies and other transport related policies, including road safety policies and so on. All this needs to be towards a common goal and not conflicting with each other. So I do suggest, if we have our will to suggest, that all this upon its inception must be consolidated based on that vision statement just now. And that is also missing at the moment. So we have a two-tier check, a policy statement from the government, and when all these are being done, it has to go through a process of making sure a consolidated policy refinement stage, of which now the DTF is playing that role. So if we can have that, which is missing again, at least we can arbitrate between the differences in terms of direction. So that's the second level. But in our country, there is a third level that we have to live with, which is actually the implementation stage. Because at the implementation stage, there's a lot of hijacking, there's a lot of intervention, there's a lot of new ideas, there's a lot of contractually driven projects, there are a lot of many things that could change the onset of the policy. So that again must be an enforcement stage where we must abide by the original policy statement of the country. So that would be my take of the whole agenda. Thank you.
You have never given up. At least you have made a very useful shift from one common public transport body mechanism to yes, you accepted our British experience to say they have created bureaucracies and they don't think there should be one central agency on transport. But now at least you have moved to let us have a sustainable transport policy nationwide, so it will be able to overcome all the different policy statements in different areas that it can be correlated to public transport. So I think that, thank you, but I do not know whether it can be made an election manifesto.
Can still try. We have time.
But at least you have put it into aspiration and policies and sustainable transport. It's very attractive suggestion. Thank you, Prof. And anyone else would like to?
Afternoon. My name is Rustam from International Islamic University, Malaysia, Department of Urban Planning. So there's a lot that have been spoken about the various plans we have local authorities with their own plans, we have the state with the structure plans. And then at the national level, I think encompassing all this, we have the National Physical Plan 2 now, we have NPP 2. So I just want to get comment from SPAD with regards to all these physical plans, which include the land use planning. Yeah? So after looking at all these plans, how is it with your public transportation plans? For some, of course, in KL, but they don't probably throughout the country if possible, right? Yeah. So you have KL 2020, you have the city plan, you have the slum construction plan, and just for Greater KL alone, you have I think nine local authorities that you need to engage. And in the start today, we have PJ with their plan proposal and water taxi and transportation. So your comment on that, please. Thank you very much.
I think the most important thing is for government, whether at federal or state level, not to make decisions before plan and studies have been done. Then it will be easier, then you can come up with ideas rather than a decision. But I think these are the processes that Cik Astam, I will ask Makno to comment how he sees all these. Some looks conflicting, some may look consistent or in conjunction can be worked together, but all these are matters in the processes that we SPAD has to deal with. Makno may like to give your comment. Be on the safe ground.
Thank you, that's so I can't be provocative anymore. Actually, this is a part of the cause of sleepless night. What Nancy mentioned before is true. There are mechanisms in place where plans go up to be discussed, rationalized. But these meetings take, how many times a year? Twice a year. And these are extremely busy people who meet for how many hours per meeting? 2-3 hours per meeting, twice a year. And to understand all the country's structure plan, as well as public transport master plan, in 2 hours, twice a year. How much do you think, how much rationalization happens in this meeting? How much deep thinking actually happens, probing and answers actually gets through to this meeting? This is my problem. If I don't care, I just want to do my job, I can do that. But if I care about what happens to KL 20 years from now, I can't sleep at night. If I don't care about what happens to Malaysia 20 years from now, I will be having a very good life. But so the rep from BKL mentioned, yes, we have spoken to each other, we have engaged, we have workshops, but really how much of the plan has changed since we started talking? So when we talk about integration, different people have different interpretation of what an acceptable level of integration to themselves personally. And that may or may not be enough to save the country. So, not to say that, things are gloomy and nothing can be done. But what I'm saying is that if we don't realize that now and take a different step, take a different approach moving forward, we may be very happy living our lives, doing our jobs, but waking up in 20 years, not where we want to be. Is that acceptable to you? It's not to me.
I see that that's not a critical view. It is an objective view of what is it. But I think most important, I know if you look at it purely in a very simplistic way, then you think that decision and the thinking is done at that meeting of 2 hours. Actually, they have undergone through various processes. That's the last mile. The decision is the last mile. So that is the thing that I think we should also address. Yes, but for SPAD, I think I'm happier now because we are being engaged more than it was before. There was no opportunity to hear this type of view. Now we are engaged. So we're moving in the right direction, I think, in that respect. I would like now, before giving to Dr. Suren, to give to Jane Norma, the Chief Executive of the ERL. So you have the floor for your intervention, please.
Thank you, Tan Sri. My first question is, can I deviate from this discussion now and move to other topics? I mean, still on transport, but not on national transport policy agenda, I know that.
Of course you can, because this is supposed to be free and flowing. It's not, but there has been so much interest of this aspect. We have actually discussed almost 2 hours almost now. You can introduce a new dimension.
Yeah, because I think it's been very interesting talks about national transport policy, about having only one or all that. But my question really, I think, to the gentleman from Atkins is that you have a lot of planning. I mean, it's very important to have planning, long-term planning. I think that vision is, by Chief Mano is very important. But in terms of implementation, could you share your experience with implementing the project in overseas, in countries that you have implemented in, as far as funding is concerned? Because at the end of the project, at the end of the day, you may have a good policy, you have a good planning, you have a good scheme and all that, but you need money to implement projects. Could you share your experience about how funding are being made available for this kind of thing? I mean, in the past, I think probably you're aware, in Malaysia, there used to be privatization that doesn't work that well. Now, I think government is moving towards PFI, PPP, you know, and all that, but maybe you could share. Thanks.
Okay, Dr. Kruger.
That is a very interesting question, which you can imagine is put in front of us in many international situations. Let me go back to something my colleague Bertil de Kleiden said in his comment. When we look at complex infrastructure that has to be implemented, as you say, then there is always a combination with regard to the planning and to the financing consideration with regard to a public part and with regard to a private part. That is why we always recommend to involve private developers early in time, because they have the capability to interest international bank funds, real estate funds and financial institutions, and to complement the necessary part the government or the public has to take in order to finance the basic backbone of the transport architecture. But when it then comes to the combination with that what Bertil called the TOD part, the transport-oriented development part, this is where best practice internationally shows that basically for $1 you invest public money, you can easily get $4 or $5, $6, $7 private money attracted to it, as long as you have revenue generating real estate around transport hubs, and it comes to the point that then almost gets self-financed at the end of the day. That's the art of this kind of development. It needs what Bertil was referring to, what Ben was referring to the other day, it needs defining the requirements very, very carefully early in time that you have from a public, from a master plan perspective. What do you want to have in this place? And I come back to something that my colleague said before. I found that very, very well phrased. You have these three objectives, Maud mentioned. You want to solve, as you said, you want to solve the public transportation problem. But you know what? What you really want to have, you want to create another element of a livable environment, and you want to have an economic catalyst. That were your words. I found that very well phrased. These are the three criteria you want to solve. And if you get that right, money will be available. Private money will be available not only in the PFI scheme, but also just private developers being interested to do exactly that, what Hansrey has alluded to, what happens in Kowloon and elsewhere in the world, where you create an environment where you have so much revenue created around the transport hub that there's almost a competition then of developers wanting to be there. And there's a lot of examples, companies like us and others can come up with how that can be done. Last comment I'd like to add, we had this discussion, my friends from the High Commission yesterday. Large financial institutions, and as a matter of fact it's often British ones, HBSC is an example, are very interested to invest in Malaysia. And from a UK government, I can tell you that specifically in a combination with a company like ours, also the UK government is prepared to come with export guarantees, so that we have also a safeguarding around the private money that is being invested in that regard. That's all accessible. The prerequisite for it is a careful planning, requirements definition exercise along the lines my CEO colleague just outlined with these three important criteria.
That would be with the closing remarks actually before. Just as before I give to Andrew, I think this part of the development side in Malaysia is still not being done. So I think there is a lot of room and opportunities for us to look at that aspect so that it will be self-funding. I think even in the case of many of the development, they tend to rely on their own funding. But in the case of MRT, there is a lot of private sector funding that is coming in. Andrew, would you like to say something? And this will be the last speaker intervention before we adjourn for lunch. Please.
Thank you, Tantri. It's four projects here in Malaysia. I had a meeting earlier this week with the Ministry of Finance at Suruhanjaya, and we offered them over $1 billion worth of finance from the UK, linked to UK companies working here on projects in Malaysia, but also with the capability for a strong local content as well, in terms of the facility that we provide. And it would be a UK government-backed AAA rated credit facility. And that's there for the taking. So Tangerine,